Can you remember what the three foundations are?
Yes, I can.
Go on,
It's
then.
economic security, border security, and
The other one.
yes, national security.
Hello, I'm Harry Cole, the Sun's political editor here at Pinewood Studios in Buckinghamshire, where the Prime Minister just unveiled his plan for change. Just don't call it a change of plan. 50% of voters say they're disappointed in how the government is doing so far in their 5-month tenure. And already, as you can see today, we're having another event that feels a little bit like a general election. Now, Keir Starmer has set out some fairly woolly targets, quite achievable goals that I suspect if another Prime Minister, say Rishi Sunak, had unveiled when he was in Downing Street, he would have been accused of dodging the big issues. There's no targets on migration here. There's no targets on benefits in here. There's no real targets on NHS reform here. So we've been speaking to the Cabinet after the speech, looking at what they think really this is all about. Is it a reset? It's kind of low-hanging fruit.
Building 1.5 million homes.
There's a lot of things, a lot of very tough things that have been left out of this, haven't there? You know, hitting 2.5% on defence, which we still don't know when that's going to happen. 11 million people out of work. The white paper last week was pretty woolly, right?
Well, we're not going to get the homes built if we're not getting people back to work. One of the reasons why we want to get to that 18-week target on seeing a consultant when you need to in the NHS is exactly because we want people to be back in work when they can work, and that means fixing our NHS as well as making sure our welfare system works properly.
And the one that we have a little bit of doubt about is this G7 target. Do you really think that Britain can be the fastest growing country in the G7 by the end of the decade?
I'm hugely optimistic.
America's going gangbusters there. They're already way ahead of us.
I'm hugely optimistic for Britain, and I would never talk Britain down. Why shouldn't we have the fastest growth in the G7? Why shouldn't we be as productive and grow as fast as our competitors and neighbours? So yes, our ambition to have the highest sustained growth in the G7 remains as our mission for this government.
Is it a mission or an aim?
It's a mission. It's our mission. Our mission for this government.
The Prime Minister said it was an aim.
No, it's a mission that we set out 2 years ago, and those missions remain. But what we want is for that growth to be felt by people in their pockets, which is why the milestone we've set out today is that people's incomes go up, that people feel better off. Because in the end, the whole purpose of growing our economy is so that working people feel better off, and that's what I'm determined happens.
Downing Street insistent we don't use the word reset today, but how do you feel things are going? There was a poll out this morning that says 50% of voters are disappointed with how the government's doing. You've had farmers on the streets, pensioners are pretty cross with you. How do you feel it's going? Are you disappointed with how the budget landed, or are should a government 5 months in really be having to re-explain what its purpose is?
We've already started delivering on our first steps in our first 5 months in government. We've brought stability back to the economy with that budget. It was a tough budget, but at the end of it, our public finances are now on a firm footing, and our public services, particularly our NHS, are properly funded. The money for the 40,000 additional appointments every week in the NHS has been granted. We've set up GB Energy and the Border Security Force. So we're already delivering, but what we've done today is set out some tough milestones whereby people can judge us against those by the end of the Parliament.
So everything's going brilliantly?
Well, look, it's a tough job, government, but we're getting on with the job.
Chancellor, thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty woolly, isn't it?
Not at all.
Come on.
I think to the challenge you put to the Prime Minister, which I thought he answered really robustly, delivering 1.5 million homes is really difficult, and it requires major reform. That reform is underway. What we're committing to do on waiting lists, delivering back to the 18-week standard the NHS should always have been meeting, but is currently...
If it's something you've always been meeting, it should have always been meeting.
Sure,
but I thought you wanted to be ambitious. I thought you wanted to go further.
We've never achieved the scale and pace of improvement on NHS waiting times that we have committed to in the plan for change, and that's going to require not just investment but reform to deliver, and ultimately people are going to hold us to account on this, and people are going to expect us to deliver. So we're setting out the plan, we're setting out the ambition, the level of ambition, but also in the knowledge that ultimately the voters will be the judges on this, and they're going to hold us.
Well, exactly, and 50% of voters surveyed by Ipsos Mori this morning, so the government's doing a bad job, including Labour voters who are saying they're disappointed with how it's going. Should a government 5 months in really be having to have what looks a lot like another election event?
Well, It's early days, and,
It's not that early. You've had 5 months.
It's early days, and trust in politics and politicians is at rock bottom. And so I'm not surprised that people will ultimately be saying, well, we've got a new government, we're going to judge them on what they do and the impact they have. We've only been in for 5 months. It feels like 5 minutes.
Does it feel harder than you thought it was going to be?
We always knew it was going to be hard. We always knew it was going to be hard. You look at the scale of the challenge in the country, the state of our economy, the state of our public services, and the state of trust in politics itself. You look around the world at the moment, we've got more turbulence, instability and insecurity than I think at any point in our modern history. We always knew it was going to be difficult. We relish it. You talk to any member of the cabinet at the moment, and we'll all tell you the same thing. It's never done anything as hard in our lives, but also relishing the opportunity to deliver real change for us.
It's all quite confusing though to the average punter. Can you remember what the 3 foundations are?
Yes, I can. It's
then.
economic security, border security, and
the other one.
Yes, national security.
There we go. And what about
You
the
nearly got me there.
What about the 7
Happily.
pillars of growth? What are the 7 pillars of growth?
Happily, Harry. After my experience in the general election campaign, the government has helpfully provided with me with the plan for change. I've got all of
the 5 missions are on the wall. Are they the missions or are they the pledges? I can't remember.
They're the 5 missions.
Yeah.
They're the 5 missions. In our manifesto, we had our first steps, and today we're setting out the milestones. It's all here in our plan for change. And ultimately, though, people are going to judge us on results. We know that, but I hope people can draw confidence now. 5 months in, we have hit the ground running. If you take the NHS, we ended the junior doctor strikes. We're employing 1,000 more GPs onto the front line. We've got vaccinations up ahead of this winter, and we're delivering the 40,000 more appointments that we promised as a first step. We've been ramping up to that, so we're not pretending it's job done. There's a lot more to do, but we haven't wasted time, and we know the scale of the challenge is enormous. That's why it's important we have clear priorities. We've set them out in the plan for change, and people will judge us on
And you can remember all of them.
Well, I'm going to do my memory test later. Thank you very much.
The manifesto said completely 100% clean energy by 2030. This says 95%.
Not sure. Let me just explain to you.
Yeah.
The manifesto, and when we launched the mission, we always said there will be a strategic reserve backup of gas. The National Energy System Operator came out with a report a couple of weeks ago, defined what they believe clean power was, a clean power system. They defined it as 95%, and we said at least 95%.
So you're now being more transparent rather than about what it actually means, rather than just a sort of big headline target.
Well, it's utterly consistent with what we said, because when we first announced the mission, obviously I was involved with it, we said there'd be a strategic backup gas reserve, and the percentage has been defined for us by the National Energy System Operator.
Of all the pledges, all the missions around about today, that's clearly the toughest and hardest one to hit. Are you confident that it really going to do it, or are we going to see this watered down more and more as that 2030 date approaches?
It's not going to be watered down, and look, I think what's so interesting about it is when we first launched it a couple of years ago, people said it was unachievable. Now when you talk to industry, when you look at the judgment of the Independent National Energy System Operator, they say it's really hard, but it is achievable. And why, Harry, is it so important? It's so important because your readers, your viewers know that the cost of living crisis that people are still facing was a product of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which drove up fossil fuel prices we cannot control. And this is about homegrown clean energy that we can control, and we have that certainty that people didn't have.
At the same time, they remain, viewers, readers, people that write us letters every day, remain deeply concerned about the cost to their wallets of this drive to net zero, this drive to doing this by 2030. Why 2030? What difference does it really make if you go a little bit slower? And lots of people will be able to save money.
No. The thing about this, Harry, is that what's changed about green energy, clean energy, is that the costs are lower than fossil fuels. And don't take my word for it. Again, the National Energy System Operator, the independent body, said that not only can this create hundreds of thousands of jobs, but it can cut bills as well. I think that's in the interest of the country. It gives us the energy security we've been sorely lacking.
And while I've got you, what's going on with Wes Streeting? He gave a speech the other night where he was giving some advice to Kemi Badenoch about being the leader of the opposition, and he was not very nice about you. He said you slagged off the party you slagged off the party's legacy when in history, and one day Kemi Badenoch, if she carries on like you were, could end up being net zero.
I haven't followed. I haven't followed that, but look, I'm relishing doing this job because I think it's so important for the country. I'm incredibly proud to serve alongside Wes under Keir, and it all feels, me being leader feels a long time ago, Harry.
Nice to see you, thank you. Secretary,
hello.
Welcome to your Never Mind the Ballot's debut, I think, isn't it?
How are you?
I'm all right. If you don't put these milestones on immigration, How can people take seriously that it's top of your agenda? I know you're going to talk about foundations and building blocks and missions and all of that, but why can't you just put a number on it which our readers and our viewers can understand?
It's clearly in the plan for change. It's incredibly important, and we are committed to bringing down legal migration and to bringing down illegal migration. Both of those have just shot up as part of the chaos of the Conservative years. I think it is one of those issues, though, where we've had, I think, because of the way the Conservatives have handled this, really over many years, where you had those sort of numbers that appeared to be pulled out of thin air, slogans that seemed to be pulled out of thin air, and then actually what happened was they did the opposite, that there really is a lot of scepticism around this. So the approach we're taking is to say we've got to bring those numbers down and let's set out the practical ways that we'll do it. So on legal migration, let's have the stronger visa controls, but linked to training.
That line is going the right way.
But we've got to go further.
Further and faster.
And we've got to have link it properly to training in the UK, because the big push was overseas recruitment.
Yeah.
Overseas recruitment quadrupled
again,
at the same time. You had
nothing in
more
that
people
about
out of
skills
work.
and training people.
Well, actually, the whole investment is all about how you boost the economy, how you make sure that you can get the links with training and so on. And that we will be doing a white paper in the new year, which will all be about how we bring net migration down. And then on the boat crossings, we've got the new agreement with Iraq that is really important, because we know that some of the gangs, it's Iraqi Kurdish gangs particularly operating in northern France, that are crucial to be in organising these boat crossings that undermine border security and put lives at risk. And so working with other countries and also making sure we increase returns. So we've had nearly 10,000 returns since the election for people who don't have a right to be here, because you've got to do the two things at once.
Just one final question. On a milestone. One more milestone. When are we going to be able to judge whether you've smashed the gangs? How is it going? You talk about three-letter slogans and gimmicks. When are we going to smash the gangs?
We're determined to just keep making progress month after month after month. We have to
Not a
do this. This
milestone,
is really important. And you've seen some of the action we've had already on going after some of the big supply chains. But look, don't get me wrong. We know there's a lot of work to do on this, and I'm determined we keep going, keep up that pressure with new agreements in place to go after the gangs. Frankly, it's disgraceful. They've been making profit out of putting lives at risk, out of undermining our border security.
Thank you.